All right, well, thank you, everyone, for being here today. Here this morning to outline how our district would implement a bell schedule option that is based on a lot of input from all of our stakeholders and especially our community. It came from our bell schedule survey. This was the culmination of a substantial process to gather input from the public. Our survey was available in English and Spanish, and nearly 57,000 people took the survey and voted for a preferred bell schedule. The survey was promoted by emails, texts, phone calls in English and Spanish to parents and staff, news media stories, multiple social media campaigns, and working with our partners, including our PTAs. We also gathered input through our bell schedule simulator, in which we got over 1,800 options to select from. 3 public meetings out in our community. We had forums with students, parents, and other groups of stakeholders. We had thousands of social media comments. We've had public comments at board meetings, and last spring we held focus groups with parents when we had an initial recommendation to talk about, along with an email address by which we got hundreds and thousands of suggestions that came through that last spring. The bell schedule survey gave 6 options for possible bell schedules. But there was one option that was definitely the consensus first choice. It was the top pick overall and also the top pick for nearly every specific group of respondents, including parents, students, and staff. This option was chosen by a wide margin over the other 5 options. It was preferred by 30% of the respondents. The next most popular option got 18% of the votes. Now I'd like to show you the option that was preferred in our survey. The public's preferred option was option A. As you can see, option A would be a significant change for our district if the school board approves it next week. Elementary schools would start first, then high schools, and then our middle schools. Our job as the district staff is to take this input from the public and look at how we could implement this schedule in our schools. So we reviewed it from many perspectives: learning, logistics, and many other considerations. Here is the staff's proposed plan to implement the preferred option from the public. Again, this is what would be done if the school board approves the schedule on October 17th. You'll see that elementary school would start at 7:40 and end at 1:55. High school would start at 8:30 and end at 3:25. Middle school would start at 9:25 and end at 4:20. We also have the times for our magnet schools. Magnet elementary schools would start at 8:45 and end at 3 o'clock. Magnet middle and high schools would start at 8:30 and end at 3:25. An important note, with 230 schools, there will be some variations on this general schedule across the district. You can find the proposed plan for every one of our schools on our website. It's important to explain why we need to change the bell schedule in some way. The existing schedule does not allow enough time for buses to complete their routes between schools. Because of that, last year, more than 12,000 students were late to school every day, and it was not their fault. That cannot continue in our district. Every student deserves a full day. This option was the most preferred by parents in our survey, but there still may be a concern for some parents. Some students in elementary school may be waiting for buses or walking to school before the sun is up. That's a challenge. I definitely recognize that. However, 48 of our elementary and K-8 schools are already starting at 7:45 or earlier right now. That means about 1/3 of our schools with elementary age students already use a schedule like this because it meets the needs of those schools. The neighborhoods around those schools and the school staffs are also used to that timing. Also, because buses will start their days on elementary school routes, they'll be more consistently on time at their elementary school bus stops. Elementary school campuses would open earlier than they do now, which could really help parents who need to get to work. We'll be offering before-school care at a low cost, which gives parents more flexibility to use other transportation options. In general, magnet school buses will pick up students later in the morning than they do now. That is a big benefit to many of our magnet students who currently have the earliest bus pickup times in the district. This may also help our more families consider magnet options. Under this proposed bell schedule, high school would start an hour later than it does right now. This matches guidance from the American Academy of Pediatrics. They recommend high school start at 8:30 or later. Plus, studies have found that high school students who get the sleep they need and start school at 8:30 or later have improved attendance and graduation rates, which is one of our district's strategic goals. They also have fewer fatal car crashes. It also contributes to a better educated and higher earning workforce. And a Columbia University study found 16-year-olds who get less than 6 hours of sleep a night were 21% more likely to be obese 5 years later. We held high school student forums. Students told us again and again that starting high school early has been a real challenge for them. This proposed schedule would allow more planning time or collaboration for our middle school and high school teachers, and we'll be offering before school care at a low cost at all our elementary and middle schools that need it. I'm sharing this with you today so everyone in Hillsborough County can review this. The board will discuss this proposed bell schedule, which was created from public input, and they'll vote on it at their meeting on October 17th. Everyone can look at the details and give feedback on our website, sdhc.k12.fl.us. And please remember, we are responding to our community, and we're listening to what you are telling us. We value your input as you help us prepare students for life. Thank you, and I'll be glad to open it up for questions.
What do you think will be kind of the biggest adjustment that people will have to make based on the schedule?
I think we talked a lot about this. So one of the biggest adjustments, obviously, is a little later start time for our high school students, which I think they'll be glad to make that adjustment. But we do realize this will change some patterns of flow and rhythm in our community. That's why this is not this whole exercise of garnering input. We needed to consider all of the impacts, not just for the student, not just for the employees, but the parents and getting them to work on time. It's been a challenge, I'll be honest with you, in our elementary schools, which is where our parents want to watch their children in the morning the longest. How when either A, they have to wait a little longer to get their child to school, therefore they may not be able to make it to work, and most work starts around 8 o'clock here in this community. The other issue is when they're waiting at the bus stop for the bus to arrive on time. Well, right now we've had many buses late to our elementary bus stops because they've only had 27 minutes between high school drop-off. That's forced our families to wait with their children, obviously, at the bus stop, creating them to be late as a worker into our business community. So, we think that the biggest adjustments will be the rhythms of traffic that we'll have to get used to as a community. We envision the traffic maybe beefing up a little earlier than it has in the past, but maybe settling down a little sooner now than it has in the past here in our community.
You said that this plan was an overwhelming pick. Did that make it easier then for you?
You always like to have an easy pick, but I will tell you there has been nothing about this process that has been easy. Everything about this process has been about listening to a lot of various stakeholders. As I said, when we change bell times, this is impacting millions of people, not just the parents and the students in our district. This is impacting everyone out on the road, every workplace in our community. So I would say the input that I received last spring helped kind of position us for where we felt like we needed to listen more to those particular areas. The areas around the challenges that parents were having with their high school students starting a little earlier. That came up over and over again, and it came up again in our student forum that we had with our students last year as well. So I think it's just responding, listening. I applaud our board who is here. I want to recognize them. Our board chair, Ms. Stewart, is here. Our vice chair, Ms. Harris, is here. Ms. Gray is here. And I think those are our three board members who are here. But the board pushed me as a superintendent to look for more ways to garner input. They were hearing the same conflicting messages. 50% thought, oh, this looks good. 50%, well, this doesn't look good. Well, 50% of our clientele is like 250,000 people. So we have to make sure we give as lengthy a process as possible to hear all their voices.
Mr. Eggins, is the plan also this coming year to phase out courtesy busing for the elementary school at the same time?
So I will tell you, as I've had conversations with our board, I believe it'll be a heavy lift to do anything further with the elimination of any further courtesy busing right now. So the plan would be, right now we would continue to implement our high school and middle school courtesy busing that we have currently eliminated. We're working with the county right now to try to build some infrastructure out there to maybe help in some areas that have been some pain points that have been brought to us. Obviously, we want to smooth those areas out. But it also, bell schedule changes, that is a huge shift in our transportation world too. So I think that this is enough for 2017-18 to really come as a proposal. We'll hold off for at least a year to expand any elimination of our elementary courtesy busing.
Obviously, you can't make every parent or employee satisfied with this. What do you say to those that say this is just out of bounds for what I'm able to cope with, even though it might be best for the overall?
Sure, and we certainly hear that. So what we try to find is we try to find those pain points. You know, some of those pain points might be, wait a minute, I've got to perhaps, you know, my child's getting out at 1:55 now in elementary. I don't have a way to pick them up. So we help them with our after-school care, low cost. We have before-school care. One of our pain points, I believe, would probably be our middle school starting at 9:25. So parents, they need to get on to work too. So having in all of our middle schools a before-school care at low cost, so our families can still drop them off at the same time they're dropping them off now, but there's someone watching them, supervising them, allowing them to get some of their homework done perhaps as they prepare for the school day. So those are the things that we've tried to anticipate all those things, because all of our folks are also parents. And so as much as this is impacting parents that are not employees of the school districts, it's also impacting employees that are parents in our school district. And so you hear from some of our employees who are parents, listening to some of their concerns, and then trying to figure out ways to kind of soften some of those challenges that we know that will exist out there. Well, I think you would say they were low cost compared to other options that you have out there in the community.
There's not a reduction.
No, there's not a reduction. We've always been a very low cost program if you compare that to other child care providers across the community. So we can get you that information, Dahlia, as far as overall cost.
But you're going to expand the child care?
Yeah, we want to make sure in every one of our middle schools that not every middle school might have a before school care. We'll need to ensure that every middle school has that next year because we know the extra 20, 25 minutes that is now delayed in their start time, parents need to get on to work. So we'll want to make sure that all of our middle schools have that option, all of our elementary schools still have that option. Although I do say now that we have a 7:10 drop-off time in the morning beginning in our elementary schools, many of our parents will have at least 50 minutes to get on to work if their work starts at 8 o'clock. So that's going to probably be more of a benefit for some of our elementary families.
What happens to the extra reading time schools and how much of a complicated factor
Yep.
is that?
We factor that in. So if you go up to the slide that has the end times, I shouldn't say the end times. It has the times that school is ending. How's that? So when we have the end times for school, you'll see that between the elementary dismissal and the high school dismissal, we have built in 1 hour and 30 minutes. That means there should be, every single bus should be in the bus ramp at elementaries on time. And now every single bus should be in our high school bus ramps on time. That's been a challenge in the afternoon. We built 1 hour and 30 minutes. With 1 hour and 30 minutes, we only need 1 hour. So what we've had to add in this year is 30 minutes on the front side. So now any ERT schools will just add to the 155. That would be the most logical option, to move them to a 225 dismissal time, and that would still leave an hour to get to our high school runs after that.
Okay, and I have not done the math, so if you'll kind of walk me through the number of hours and minutes.
Yep.
Has that remained the same, or did that shrink a little?
Elementaries remain the same. High schools did come down to 6 hours and 55 minutes of instruction during a day. That's still more than what the state requires, just so you know. here's the benefit to our students. One of the things that we heard loud and clear from our high school principals, teachers, is we do not want to give up our 7 period a day for our students. The 7 periods provides our students 4 extra classes in high school for AP, intensive help, dual enroll, all those extras. Now our students still have that ability to do that. There will be no class reduced more than 3 minutes in a high school with this option. Some high schools will only have to see a 1 or 2 minute reduction based off of maybe trimming their passing times in between classes. So we've already created some schedules that are workable for our principals to look at with their staffs and see which one may work best for their schools.
Did I read it wrong? Because it looked like elementary maybe was adding a little extra time. Is that the case?
The proposal that I brought last spring was going to add 15 more minutes to the schedule. By adding 15 more minutes to the schedule last year, the goal was to enhance our music, art, and PE to provide additional. Right now, we felt like in this first wave of implementation that we would not add those 15 minutes. The reason why we had to add the 15 minutes also was that in that proposal last year, elementary was squeezed in between high school and middle school. By doing that, we literally had to create a little bit more time, expand it in order for that option to work. So we'll look at those other enhancements as we move forward in the future. We just did not see in this initial year of implementation that we would be able to do that both logistically and fiscally.
One more question, because I mean, you're going to make a lot of people happy with this. Number one, people who are concerned about sleep patterns, you know, for high school teenagers.
Yep.
Also the magnet people who were very upset when it was so early. The other argument that we kept hearing before in terms of high school was that high school kids like to get out early, and that some of them need to get out early for jobs. And
Yep.
I mean, is that no longer a concern, or what was the thought
Yep.
process?
So if you hear high school students at the student forum as you're here every year, you'll know that they want to start late and end early. That's your typical high school response, but we know that's a real issue with work in the afternoon. We know that what's been happening right now for our high schools is that because of the elementary dismissal and buses not even getting to our high schools sometimes till 3:15 or 3:30, we feel like we're almost going to probably be leaving campus on our high schools about the same time this year than we did last year. Last year was because of our logistical challenges we had with our overall routes. This year it'll be because we're maximizing the minutes for our high schools to get 6 hours and 55 minutes in.
What, if any, impact will there be on extracurriculars and things of that nature?
Sir, we had a lot of conversation about that. So one of the things that has been a real challenge for our high school students is many of their games, a lot of their extracurricular activities are later into the evening, which creates challenges for them to end a baseball game at 10:30 at night and know they have a early morning class to go to. This allows them a little bit more of a comfort to know they have a little bit more time in the morning to get some sleep, to get into their first class. We also know there will probably be, just as we've had in the past, a pretty good flow because the release time at 3:25 is very similar to what the release time is last year. So practices will be able to kind of start right at the end of that day and be able to get out at pretty much the same time.
How is this proposal, well now it's definite, but how has it been received by the staff, specifically teachers? Are they on board with it?
Well, they were the big respondents to the survey. So part of this is not waiting to release a schedule and then getting their feedback. This is really about, we want from the ground up, if you think about the process we went through, we literally allowed teachers to help create some of these options from the very beginning. And so that helped initially with them having a little bit of ownership of some of the choices that they were ultimately selected. Now it really is about, if you look at who chose which option more, the option that we landed on was the one that teachers felt like, both in elementary, middle, and high, this is the option that we could live with the very best compared to all the options that we have out there. So I feel like, you know, once we move forward, the feedback that you'll probably get, I believe, is more positive on the teacher side. The adjustment, obviously a little bit early in the morning for elementary. I think high school, you're talking to a high school teacher right there beside you, you know, a little earlier. He says, yeah, I might go back and teach right now. You know, starting a little bit later is definitely a win for some of our high school teachers that have not had that experience for a long time. And also, please remember, our high schools, in order to get the buses out of the loop in time, our buses have literally had to show up at our high schools between 6:30 and 7 in the morning. And that means high school students have been getting on the bus at 5 5:15. That will no longer be the case in Hillsborough County.
And how much of a cost savings do you say this is?
So the cost savings in this will really be about the efficiencies that we will now be able to garner in our logistics with our transportation routes. In the past, because we haven't had a good separation between the morning, high school, and elementary, we've almost had to double hire some bus drivers in order just to take care of that lack of planning, so to speak. And that's going to no longer be the case. Some drivers may literally be able to drive an elementary run, a high school run, and a middle school run, which has probably never been the case since we've been in place in Hillsborough County, which will allow us to be more efficient with our overall hiring with our transportation. I will tell you, though, this year is the very first year Hillsborough County has actually had more bus drivers than routes. So we're in a good place right now with becoming a better service for our community with our bus stops and our drivers. Now we get our logistics right, and we really think we'll be able to hit on all cylinders with that. But the big win outside of the finances is the instructional time for our students. That is the big win. No longer can this superintendent put his head on the pillow at night knowing that 12,000 students are going to be late the next day. I'll never be able to say that again, and I'm glad I'll never be able to say that again. All right, thank you very much. I appreciate your time here.